Okay.
It's a Greek name, yeah.
Okay, I had no idea.
Are you recording?
I am now, but yeah.
Perfect. No, keep it going. So let me tell a little bit about myself. So,
Okay.
My name is Jerry Fragiskatos. I'm the CEO of HAL8. HAL8 is the labs that is currently building Apex Fusion protocol. I'm originally from Canada, from Montreal. My parents are Greek. So I'm of Greek origin, and I've worked all across the planet throughout my lifetime. I had a privileged kind of professional career. I'm a McGill engineer by training, got my MBA out of Paris, France, worked there for about 10 or 15 years, worked in the UK, worked in Copenhagen and in Denmark, worked in South Africa, and mostly it's been traditional tech. So I was working for a large corporate system integrator called CSC, Computer Sciences Corporation. That was kind of the bulk of my career. And then I got the opportunity to move to the United States around 2014. I got a job at Dell, great company, well-run, fantastic place to be. Again, big clients, big corporate clients, large scale IT, like probably over $5 billion of business I've been involved and sold over the past 25 years. And then all of a sudden, I got this call from IOG, or back then it was IOHK, and said, hey, we're looking for some guys from traditional space to help us kind of, help us structure things, processes, commercial, expand what we're doing here. And it just came out of the blue. And a recruiter called me, Sasha was his name. And he said, would you want to work for a crypto company? And at the time, having been so institutionalized for so many years, I'm like, this is a scam, right? Crypto's a scam. This is where people launder money. It's for criminals and all that kind of stuff. But guess what? At the time, my main client at Dell was Fidelity. And Fidelity was into Bitcoin. So I think the story, or the legend at least, was that their CTO back in like early days of crypto, of Bitcoin, took the compute power at night and started mining Bitcoin, like without the permission of the CEO, Abby Johnson, and just accumulated Bitcoin, et cetera. And then at one point, it started to become a significant amount of money. So I think it was, again, I could be butchering this. This could be just hearsay, but I think it's something like this. And he brought it to the attention of the CEO and said, hey, we've been mining this Bitcoin. It's worth X $100 million now. And they got orange pilled, right? So Fidelity was one of the first companies that really embraced Bitcoin, right? And we see that all the way to today. So when I was interviewing for the job, my client at Fidelity said, no, you have to do this. No, Cardano's legitimate. He was like listening to Charles at the time and all that kind of stuff, and just went down the rabbit hole, started studying the Bitcoin white paper, the Cardano white paper, Ethereum, all that kind of stuff, bought my first crypto, and it's over.
What was your first crypto?
Bitcoin.
Okay.
Bitcoin was my first crypto. I could only buy it through a centralized platform, and it's called SoFi. So I didn't even have a wallet or anything, right? I just offered it. And I bought Bitcoin to learn. And this was during the pandemic. And I bought Ethereum and of course Cardano, right? Were the first kind of my first plays into crypto. And now I'm hooked, right? Mm-hmm. This is my mission. It's not even my job anymore. It's what I want to do. And had the privilege to work for Cardano for Charles at IOG for 4 years.
What right off of that, what was it actually like working with or for Charles? Because we see so many rumors. There's all this stuff all the way back with him and Vitalik and Gavin Wood and all that stuff. What is Charles actually like? So,
don't believe the press, I would say. Working for him personally, he's a funny guy, which is something I don't think everybody knows. Like he's
I got a little hint of that in person.
Yeah. See, he's a troll, right? And trolls get misinterpreted, I would say, to a certain extent. He's a genius. Of course he is. Tries a lot of different things. It's like working inside of a nuclear power plant, right? Because there's so much stuff going on. He's got so many ideas of what he wants to do. He's an innovator, right? So
100%.
I saw the comment on, questions to ask, here, and says, competing against Cardano. So you don't compete against Cardano. And that's exactly right. It's an innovation engine is what Cardano is, right? They start from first principles, peer-reviewed research, formal methods, and build something completely new, right? And that's needed in our space, right? And this is where maybe I could start talking about what Apex Fusion is, right? And what, they'll try 1,000 things, right? And then one of those things will stick, and one of those things is like market changing, innovative, and so forth, and the other things are not. That's typical in innovation, right? I, as a chief commercial officer at the time, spent 4 years trying to get real world adoption and corporate cases and all that kind of thing. I was kind of more accustomed to things already being battle tested. In other words, you don't deploy something unless it's been proven, it's in the market, it's been there for a while, and you deploy it, right? And that's how you kind of get real world adoption. And our space is still very much in an innovation phase. But kind of the genesis of Apex Fusion was, first off, got together with a bunch of Cardano OGs, people from the Bitcoin community, Ethereum community, Polygon community. In fact, the core tech team that's building Apex Fusion was part of the core tech team that built Cardano, part of the core tech team that built Polygon. And if I were to summarize it kind of in a very reductive sense, I think somebody said, I think it was Reagan that said this, that the business of America is business. The business of Apex Fusion is business. So we love that there's innovators out there, but we're here to take battle-tested tech, the most innovative tech, put it together and build something new based on that to serve business, to create real-world adoption. And as things prove themselves out, we'll add to the stack. Maybe one day, once we're very successful and we've got a large treasury we can use, we can participate on the innovation side and try new things. But at this stage, it's all about taking the best stuff, putting it together, and actually the innovation is building something new that kind of amalgamates, is that a word? Mm-hmm. Integrates these different pieces together. So, if you look at our space kind of broadly speaking, right, just from the tech landscape, let's start with the technology. And there's the move language and what Aptos is doing, what Solana is doing. I'll just put that on a side for a second. But the two main technologies are UTXO-based technologies and account-based technologies. So you got Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Cardano, Dash, I believe. Sui, I think, kind of uses UTXO as well.
Does it? I didn't know that.
I do think it does. Fact check me on that, but I did check something out that there is a portion of it that has a UTXO component to it.
Interesting.
Which has some very interesting characteristics, right? It's far more deterministic than account-based model. It allows for parallel kind of processing. This is why the whole debate about who's faster is very difficult to actually adjudicate, because in the UTXO, you can bundle a bunch of stuff together. Account-based, it has to be sequential. But account-based is easier for programmability. UTXO is better for kind of your base currency, like Bitcoin and ADA and so forth. So our thought process was as follows. There's these two ecosystems that don't really communicate with each other. These are the biggest ecosystems in our industry. And I'm going to start going to Web 2 speak a little bit here. It's missing the middleware. It's missing the software that kind of makes these things work together and makes them, fluid and, takes advantage of the different trade-offs of the different types of approaches, right? So that's the genesis of it. And, the Cardano white paper, just reread it. A lot of the inspiration of what we're doing is actually in the Cardano white paper. It's like, it was very well spelled out like 10 years ago. And from the U2XO side, Cardano is by far the most advanced, most innovative platform from the U2XO side. On the EVM side, or the account-based side, as chief commercial officer trying to get real-world adoption, I was constantly looking at Polygon and what they were doing. It's like they just kept getting adoption. They kept getting real-world use cases. So there's a lot of corporates out there that are actually using Polygon tech, right? So the Disney one they use Polygon. Starbucks, Nubank. Now, even more recently, you got Polymarket that's on Polygon. You've got Rebuttal, which is BlackRock's stablecoin that's on Polygon. So you've got this system that has got the network effects. You've got massive liquidity from Ethereum and a lot of adoption with developers and in the corporate world that gets you close to real-world adoption. And I'm like, well, these are the two missing pieces. You put these two together and, it's greater than the sum of its parts, right? And that's really kind of the genesis of what we're trying to do here. And we built it. It's in testnet. It's working. And we're looking to launch it in Q1 of next year. Once we get our external dependencies sorted out, like exchange listings and all that kind of stuff, I could be more accurate on a date. But broadly speaking, we're looking to launch it next year. And, we're super, super excited about it. It's got it's a life's work. It's a journey. It's been fantastic. It's been a lot of positive energy, a lot of people that are like, well, it's great to have a place where communities can work together instead of being tribal and against each other.
Right.
It's great to recognize the value of other platforms instead of saying ours is better because of ABC, whereas this is worse, right? It's like, I'm an engineer, right? What is it all about? It's about trade-offs at the end of the day. There is no such thing as perfection. You do something, you do it set on a bunch of principles and assumptions. It has a set of trade-offs. You do something else, it's got a set of trade-offs. And there's a lot of value in creating synergy between platforms like that. And I'll give you an example and just go into kind of the details. And stop me anytime with any questions if you'd like. I'm kind of speed rolling here a little bit.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's because I'm so excited about what we're doing, right? So here's how we built it. And we went through the process. We even had some game theorists from the Ethereum core team that kind of helped us out to do this. And what would they have done differently, and what Polygon would have done differently, and what Cardano would have done differently. And here's what we came up with. We said, okay, we need an anchor chain, a neutral anchor chain to kind of anchor this ecosystem. And that's what our prime chain is. And prime chain is basically proof of stake Bitcoin or mainline Cardano. These are both accurate terms to describe it. It's basically a reboot of the Cardano base chain that has no execution layer. It uses Ouroboros as consensus. And I think, with all the peer-reviewed research that went into that, the UTXO model, the formal methods, the functional programming, it's by far the best consensus layer. And guess what? They solved native liquid staking all at the same time. You got Ethereum, everybody else has to do liquid staking derivatives. You got a highly decentralized platform using Bitcoin technology, proof of stake, that's liquid staking, right? That you don't need to create derivatives. I mean, that's a huge innovation.
See, the more you talk about this, the more excited I get about my Cardano bags. I'm like,
same here.
Yes, preach, brother, preach.
Same here. I think a lot of, and I kind of, I don't like the hate that Cardano gets in the ecosystem. I think,
in a way, I enjoy it to some extent. It can piss me off, but
sure,
cause me to thrive that much more in a way, only because the bulk of the hate comes from competitive projects that look at Cardano as such a significant threat that they have to put out all these false narratives to try and drive newcomers away.
Yeah.
But what happens is it forces the smarter of the bunch to dive deeper and either prove or disprove those claims. And then they realize that's all bullshit. Yeah. I'm going to go get some. I'm going to be a holder. I'm going to launch a staking node. So it brings more people to the ecosystem, I think, who've been just kind of laying dormant, safely waiting for what is going to be the outcome. And now we're starting to see the culmination of what that outcome means.
100%. But we do have a slightly different direction, different ethos. So we're only doing battle tested things that have been proven in the past. So we're keeping it at just a consensus layer. There's no treasury that gets collected, which maximizes the rewards for the SPOs. All it does is a very singular mission is to secure the main token, the Apex token. That's all it is to do. So that's why you can call it proof of stake Bitcoin. That's why you can call it mainline Cardano. It's the original version of it, right? It's going to be highly decentralized, highly secure. So that's the anchor chain, and it's neutral because it cannot do execution. So it's not competing with the other chains. Right. So the problem with Ethereum, what they did is first they didn't solve the liquid staking bit, which created a huge issue. And then they created L2s for scaling, and then they're going to start competing with the L2s. Right. That just doesn't work in my mind. Right. So, and Cosmos kind of had a similar problem, but from the exact opposite direction, where Atom kind of doesn't compete at all, actually doesn't do anything. It's not meaningful in any way. So everybody creates their Cosmos chains, and then Atom is kind of not useful. Right. So Apex is useful. It's the native token. If you want to use the Apex ecosystem, you need to connect to the router, the reactor bridge, and use Apex as your native token. The other chains do not have their native token, right? Okay, so then we start saying, okay, so which communities can we serve now based on the best in class tech? So of course, we're part of the Cardano community. Half of the companies is Cardano community members, right? And people build the core tech. So let's serve the Cardano community. So what do we feel from a commercial perspective can help, right? It does draw outside the lines a little bit from the ethos because it does not go fully decentralized. We did the decentralization bit on Prime. So we said vector. And vector is like the Polygon of Cardano. It's faster, cheaper, and more centralized or less decentralized, right? So that can help with the scalability. So if you can imagine that, Cardano is this big pipe that's got UTXOs running through it. Well, we're adding like 3 or 4 or 5 pipes, like that goes faster, cheaper for things that require that kind of faster, cheaper experience, right? So that's where we're onboarding dApps from Cardano to come on board through Vector, and Vector is the chain that's faster, cheaper, right? That's how you solve the scalability problem. Okay. Then we've got the programmability issue, is that Haskell it's an arcane language, right? It's not used by many people. Now, I believe that the decision was correct longer term, because what is that language used for? It's used for highly secure use cases like aerospace, finance, and all that kind of stuff. So
everything that's coming to play right now.
Exactly. So it's 10 years, like the Cardano white paper was 10 years ahead of its time. I think Haskell functional programming, that's 10 years ahead of its time, right of now. Because what they're going to realize is when their security departments start looking at it and their compliance departments start looking at it, well, like, this is less secure than this. Why are we using this? Right? So I think there's a very longer term play for Haskell, but you're not going to get a big ecosystem from it, right?
Right.
Solidity is entrenched. It's got all the devs. The liquidity is already built up in the ecosystem. What Polygon is doing with the aggregator stuff, there's just so much going on there. The big corporates, the big financial institutions, they're already using Solidity and EVM.
I talked to a developer at Rare Evo, actually, and he was a Haskell coder.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I'm like, why does Haskell get all the hate? And I'm like, obviously it's an older language, but the benefits of it seem to outweigh, a lot of the hate. And he basically summed it up for me. Now, granted, he could be a bit biased, but he basically said it's basically a lot of hate from programmers who have invested their lifetimes fully understanding and growing with an already established language that don't want to learn something new.
Of course.
And I was like, that makes sense. And when I think about it, back in the day, I actually did corporate recruiting for a little while. I was kind of an IT headhunter for like a brief moment. I hated the job. It felt so dirty, pulling people. And I just couldn't. I think I lasted maybe 2 months. Yeah. But I remember at the time, I was looking for, I can't even remember the programming language, but it was a database system.
SQL, Oracle.
I think it started with an S. It was like S-Base or something. It was very archaic, right? Sure. It was some old school shit from way back in the day, probably the 80s, right? And it was considered a dead language that nobody used.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, corporate America discovered its use today and how it's more secure. And there's so many different things about it that other programming languages of the modern day did not offer. Yeah. And so what used to be like a $30,000 a year job that, very few people had became this $150,000 a year programming job for these databases for corporate America. Right. And then they were in such high demand because of this new revelation that this is tech that's actually needed more today than it was originally. So what you're saying about basically almost like the use for Haskell is ahead of its time. That makes a lot of sense. And I feel like we see that a lot in technology. So that's interesting perspective.
So I'm going to age myself a little bit here. I just turned 50 in September. So
I'm glad somebody's older than me, man.
So I'm one of the elder statesmen in the crypto space.
And you come into everybody, so you guys know, he's at my house right now.
That's right. So, in the crow's nest.
In the crow's nest itself, which is the first ever. That's right. And, I consider it a bit of a birthday present, a little, because my birthday's this next weekend.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. So it's actually really cool to have you here and to have this discussion in my own world.
So listen, you came out, you're a person that sees past the horizon, right? And we reached out to you very early on and you endorsed us heavily, right? And I'm like, I got to come face to face. I got to be in the crow's nest. I got to talk to you personally. We had some history at Cardano and so forth, but I just want you to know that your faith is well placed, right? And I want to explain why, not just to believe in us. I want to explain why it is, right? So that's why I'm here, and thank you so much for inviting me. But let me age myself a little bit here about kind of different technologies. So when I started in outsourcing, I was working with mainframes, right? Like mainframe outsourcing was still a thing because IBM had, and by the way, mainframes still exist. And by the way, a lot of banks still use mainframe because
scary to me now.
It's yes and no, because it's extraordinarily secure, right? And I had in one of our outsourcing deals, we were trying to get them to go from mainframe to something else. It was a large wealth manager with a lot of powerful families that had their wealth there. And the IT guys, are you crazy? We're never going to change this. This does exactly what we want it to do. Doesn't connect to the internet. Like, you have to pass through layers of security to get in there. He goes, no, this is the best technology. There's nothing better than this to do what you want to do. And I feel like Haskell is a little bit like that. There's going to be certain super high powered use cases where you're not going to want to choose something else, right? The issue that it has today, where it gets a lot of headaches and so forth, is that it doesn't create all the 1,000 Web3 projects.
It's not a gimmick language.
Exactly. So it creates some hurdles there. Those who love it and use it. Those who don't would prefer just to get the product out quickly and the rest of it.
Right.
So then this brings us to Nexus. So Nexus is the EVM chain. It's based on Polygon Edge, uses the latest Ethereum client. And that's really to bridge over to that deep well of developers, liquidity, and all the rest of it. And it's all connected to the router bridge. And guess what technology the router bridge uses? UTXO. Because that's the best messaging system, because that's the most secure messaging system. So our internal bridge, out of all the choices, uses UTXO. So that's, and I'm not sure if I can mention their names. I'll find out and I'll see if I can. But the game theorists that kind of worked on core Ethereum, when they started working with us, they're like, we didn't know this could do this. We didn't know it had this characteristics. We never actually looked at it. And they said, this is the best technology for your bridge is UTXO, right? So that's a perfect example of bringing Ethereum guys in deep into, like, you know, the core tech and saying, well, no, this is a better choice. You should use this. So the reactor bridge is actually based on UTXO. It's its own chain. And that's what creates the magic. So you got this anchor chain that is neutral, that then has chains on top of it. Don't want to get discussion layer ones, layer twos, side chains.
That's a huge rabbit hole, right?
Etc. Because they all lack proper definitions, and it doesn't actually fit in any of those categories, right? And the best version we can come up with, which is not very catchy from a marketing perspective, is federated multi-chain. You know, like the prime chain is like the federal government, and then the chains are the states, and the federal is like a very libertarian federal government. You know, doesn't do any much except give money to the states to do what they need to do, kind of thing, right? Probably butchering it, but that's kind of what it is, right? So listen, like, I feel, in any case, this is our thesis, right? That we've kind of put it all together. Now, what about governance? What about ecosystem? So back to battle tested tech, right? There is no governance system yet that has proven itself out over one or two cycles, right? So the only thing that actually works right now is to put a set of people responsible. So we built a foundation in Switzerland. Our chain is governed under FINMA, and we got a FINMA ruling that Apex is not a security, it's a utility token. It's sufficiently decentralized and all the rest of that stuff. And we wrote a deed collectively as the core contributors that kind of built this project that mandates the foundation from a fiduciary standpoint to deploy the tokens to reward the ecosystem and the community. It's in there. So they have a fiduciary responsibility. If they don't do it, you know, best case they get fired, right? Worst case they're breaking the rules. And that's the best version we can come up with right now in terms of governance. And then we've baked in right from the genesis the tokenomics to serve the ecosystem. So there's different layers of the tokenomics. The first layer is called infusion. Infusion is the easiest layer. You come to our project, you say we want to do ABC, very light touch. We delegate to your pool. You keep the rewards. Get you started. Get you going, right? Then, you know, there'll be, let's call them, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of projects that do something like that, right? Or whatever our tokenomics can manage. Some of those will do something interesting, right? Then the grant program comes and says, hey, wait a second. Instead of putting grant programs where you get a freebie from the beginning, the grant program looks to reward people for doing something interesting or doing something innovative or doing something out of the box. So the grant program comes in and they kind of reward the projects that have done something interesting. Then as it progresses down the chain, we have tokenomics for venture. So the ones that get to the next level, there's tokenomics for venture that will be given probably to a venture incubator or something like that, that will help the ecosystem get to the next stage. And then we've got a bucket for liquidity, because you need grease in the wheels, you need oil in the system. And that just gives liquidity pools and all that kind of stuff. So we baked it in up front. If at some point in the future, this comes back to battle tested tech, if some point in the future there's decentralized governance that's proven itself, then we can always adopt it. The other component that we it's a general purpose platform right now. Anything can go on it. So you can have RWA, DPIN, gaming. We haven't really focused on a sector. But the one thing we said we do need to put in the system is a reputation system, right? Because that's the only way you can kind of have a check and balance with the foundation giving out, rewards to the ecosystem. A reputation system, and it's actually, there's a bit of innovation in it. It uses ZK proofs. So when you identify yourself, that ID is then not visible to everybody else. It uses AI to kind of build a holistic reputation system. And then the idea is that reputation system becomes the engine for how you get rewarded in the future. So adding value to the network or participating in the network is what gets you more rewards. And the airdrops that are going to be coming and so forth are going to be geared towards reputation. And
so kind of not necessarily against a buy and hold kind of thing, but the more you're using it, the more you gain from it.
Exactly. We're rewarding people who are valuable, right? Yeah. And, when I was working at Cardano, went all over Africa.
Would this be like proof of use?
That's a great, yeah, maybe proof of use, proof of value. It's reputation. We could toy around with some of these concepts and figure out a good way to encapsulate it. But ultimately, our system today in emerging markets is based on ID, right? Who you are.
Mm-hmm. Which is going to continue being a bigger and bigger deal every year.
Yeah. And there's countries, like I went to Burundi, which didn't even have a census.
Oh, Burundi. Yeah, I was just there last Thursday. Yeah. Never heard of it.
It's one of the poorest countries in the world.
Okay.
And it doesn't even have a census, doesn't even know how many people are in their country. So they don't have IDs, right? And so how do you get them involved in an economy if you don't know who they are? And reputation is kind of going from ID based to behavior based, right? Our ID based system is so flawed because look at all the hacks. Everybody gets your personal data, all the rest
LifeLock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. And it's broken, right? Doesn't mean that ID doesn't have its place. Of course it does. But it should be ZK proof. There should be something super secure.
100%.
And then the only thing that gets exposed, this is one of the big promises of our industry, right? The only thing that gets exposed is your behavior.
Not just this industry.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So that's one of it's probably our only big bet outside of the main structure is a reputation system to kind of hold it all together. Mm-hmm. And that reputation system is going to be rolled out soon. And yeah, so we've been in, so let me give you a bit more update in terms of where we are. So we closed our first round about a month ago, raised about $6 million. It was led by TRGC, a VC. We're looking to launch as quickly as possible. So I'm not sure there'll be room for another round. We may, if there's interest, we may put a strategic round in place to kind of raise more capital to expand. But we're really keying in on a Q1 launch and getting out the door. We've been in test net since August, and that's kind of where we're at.
You're basically laid out to launch as so many of these big milestones are looking to be met on Cardano.
Yes.
As well as everything else for the most part. So it's going to, the competition is definitely going to get more and more fierce.
Sure.
But you guys, I've covered a lot. I mean, since the last video I did on Apex, I can't even imagine the number of development partners you guys have accumulated since then. Like, I really need to go back through and see, okay, who else has come to the table since then? Because there were so many even then.
Yes.
And I found it quite interesting because the way you guys went through kind of announcing these partners and kind of what they were doing and why and all of that. Yeah. And everybody had kind of their little bio about what their intentions were on the chain. And I thought that was really, really cool because you don't really see that too often. And it all seemed very like everybody was joining and becoming a part of this new ecosystem for a very specific reason. What do you think is the primary reason that's been drawing all of these people in, drawing them into a new chain that is not launched, that is, you know, still in its not even an infancy yet. It's still forming.
Yes.
Like, what do you think is really drawing all of these people in?
So I think the value proposition to start with, I've just gone through it. I think when people start to understand it, they're like, well, this is different, right? This is something unique that's coming out. It's different from anything else I've heard of, right? So there's like that intrigues people to start with. The second part is the one thing we did do right is the team, the quality of the team, right? We have like OGs, gurus, all the rest of it, like real strong people, also people from traditional business and people from traditional politics and all this kind of stuff. We built a structure legally compliant out of the box, which kind of helps a lot of people. They were very worried about regulatory compliance.
I'm sure.
So Swiss Foundation.
Anytime you need somebody to move to Switzerland, you just let me know. If you need somebody to manage stuff out there, you know, I'll move out there on your dime.
All right, we'll let you know. We'll let you know about that. Beautiful mountains, beautiful scenery, very pragmatic, you know, approach to things. So Switzerland as the foundation with Venmo, that's very crypto friendly regulator, best place to kind of issue, right? Our labs is in Abu Dhabi. HAL8 is based out of Abu Dhabi. You know, all the stuff that's going on over there, and we have a U.S. presence, right? A lot of the original core contributors from the United States. You met Armando. Now you met me in person. We met before. Tom Flynn, our CEO, Rob Cohen. There's a few others that are based in the U.S. We're ready to kind of expand in the U.S. We've been kind of...
Now's the perfect time, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
We're starting to get on fire.
Exactly. So, I mean, we must have some nice angels behind us or something, but it's like we're primed, right, to kind of get it all right and get out of the box. And it's just, honestly, it's the quality of the team, I think, is by far the biggest attractor, right? Like when they talk to people, they see the depth of experience. They see people who've been there, done it before. That level of confidence, I think, is what draws in the developers and just the uniqueness of what we're doing. Also, people are fed up with tribalism. Right, they're fed up with attacking other projects. Because
I'm definitely burnt out on it myself.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's kind of fun. It's like
the narratives are set. Like, you know, I've always kind of gone, and I didn't start that way. You know, but my reservations about Solana, you know, really took off the more I kept seeing the paid advertising. You know, the more I saw all of the paid narratives on, you know, if I go to like Crypto Panic and I'm looking for the latest Cardano update news, then it's all paid Solana ads basically talking about how Cardano's trash in favor of this new meme token that's going to 1000x, right? And if it wasn't that, it's the way, you know, a lot of the big Cardano or the Solana supporters were basically neglecting, ignoring, or just spreading misinformation about Cardano, right? And so that's what started really boiling my blood. And that's what caused me to start saying, no, wait a minute. We're going to look a little bit deeper behind the veil of all of this paid marketing and see what this is really about. And then once you start seeing this is just a lot of smoke and mirrors for the most part, I don't necessarily consider that tribalism as much as I consider it journalism for once, to an extent, right? Because people can say, oh, Crow, you're a Cardano bull. Of course you hate Solana. And it's like, no, listen, there are a million projects out there competing with Cardano. It's not that I am a Cardano maxi. I'm about innovation and integrity. And so, you know, it's like if it were rising on its own merit, I probably would have taken part somehow. But that's not how I saw things. And so now I feel like the truth is out there at this point. So it's like myself and others, DB Crypto, there are a lot of people out there who have really exposed the realities behind these false narratives and why they put so much money into perpetuating these false narratives. And so it's like, you know, my focus now is on where I started, which is Cardano.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting point because divisiveness gets you clicks, right? Actually, you know, this type of trolling and baiting and misinformation, unfortunately gets you attention, right?
Unfortunately.
It's been one of the struggles of our project is that being kumbaya and love and all this kind of stuff, which we are, doesn't get as many clicks as attacking somebody. Right.
That's true.
And We're avoiding it, right? We don't want to do that, right? Because that's not our ethos.
I feel like you have to build your narrative on paid marketing, focusing on the tribalism, or real innovative use cases that have been adopted by major players.
There's no shortcut in my view, right? In other words, so we are going in a highly competitive market, right? But we're going to outlast. It's the only way to do it. Is outlast, outbuild, get adoption, get real metrics. There's no shortcut, right? Yes, you may be able to get away with kind of hype, capitalize that hype, but then what are you doing with that hype? You're dumping on your community to build your treasury, to build for the future, and then you got a big shoes to fill after that because you just did that, right? So you better fulfill your promise because you just capitalized off something that wasn't built yet, right? We're trying to do the opposite of doing that, but the challenge is that probably get less attention to start with, right? So this is where just getting the word out, getting more podcasts, explaining what we're trying to do, but we're not going to be the attack guys. We're not going to be it's not even part of who we are, right? It's like personally, I hate that stuff, right? I can't stand it.
Even being around Armando and like at Rare Eva, we hung out a lot and we talked a lot about the project and his goals and what he's doing and all of that. And, he and this is one of the reasons why I did become so interested in Apex so early on is because his passion really does seem to have stemmed from his love of Cardano.
Oh, yeah.
So I see a lot of the comments and things on Twitter and elsewhere, like, why do they want to compete with Cardano? Why are they a Cardano competitor? They just want to capitalize on what Cardano's build and pull interest from the community, right? And I've even been even recently, somebody said something about, why am I addressing the Cardano community? I'm like, well, for one, because it's all UTXO based and it's basically a similar spine with different arms and legs is the way I look at it. Yeah. And so in a sense, it's part of the same ecosystem, the same family of blockchain.
It is.
And so, that's how I look at things. And I think and I said in the Twitter, I'm like, there is no competition for Cardano at this point, in my opinion. There will always be blockchains that can excel in different areas.
That's right.
And that's okay. I would much rather see a blockchain with integrity and a strong team and a strong message and a strong mission do well than have them fall by the wayside because there was no community adoption because it wasn't hype enough, or it didn't have enough meme coins associated with it, or whatever a lot of the gimmicky bullshit is that we're basically being programmed to believe is the metric for success for any new blockchain. Right. So, and that's been a really hard road to travel with Cardano when you see these other blockchains that are excelling and they're rising and their number go up, but really all they're bringing to the table are, very gimmicky use cases or interests that are able to acquire new public adoption because they expect their money to double or triple overnight.
Right.
And that to me isn't really the most important narrative in blockchain. This is really an era of disruption of all things. And so to me, it's very much about the technology that's going to take us to that new level. And so, I have taken a big interest in Apex as well as Cardano, and there are others that I'm interested in. But I'm definitely tired of the tribalism myself, and I just want to see quality grow.
So, you kind of re-encapsulated our mission, right? And I think people get into zero-sum games. Mm-hmm. This is not a zero-sum game.
Not at all.
How many users are there of blockchain right now? Mm-hmm. 100 million? There's 8 billion people on the planet, and we're fighting each other.
Right.
What are we doing here? This is ridiculous. I think it was Sandeep on a podcast a while back that said, if I forget the number, let's say 1 billion people were to adopt blockchain, there's not enough block space for all of them, right? So, I don't see it as a zero-sum game. I see it as a network effect. I see as building bridges multiplies that network effect, and that's what we're doing. So that's why, on the tweet I'd like to get to the questions and any other questions that you have on the tweet feed. It's not a competition. It's an extension and expansion. We're saying we love Cardano. It's the Cardano white paper and open source code. That's what open source, and we're open sourcing all our code as well, right? So then somebody else can build on top of us, which we want, right? And that's the game. The game is not a zero-sum game. The game is let's all increase the pie together. It's like co-opetition. Have you ever heard this term before?
The what?
Co-opetition.
No.
cooperate and to compete.
Oh, okay.
So basically, we all work together to expand the pie, right? Together. And then we compete for the pieces, right? Okay. But we're all way better than we were, started. But if we fight each other, then we're not looking at the real fight, which is getting adoption in the real world, right? Now that the biggest thing holding us back was regulatory clarity in the United States, the biggest market, the biggest capital market.
How do you see that changing now?
Well, I think if Fit 21 or some version of that passes, that we go from a 2-lane highway to like a 10-lane highway. Mm-hmm. It's like all the things we're not allowed to do. And the U.S. has a big stick. It's not just the U.S. Other jurisdictions follow the U.S. lead. So even if they've got like doing business Switzerland and Abu Dhabi, even though they've got clarity, they have to jump through 10 or 15 more hoops to make sure that they're not stepping on any U.S. jurisdiction, any U.S. laws, any U.S. people, all that kind of stuff, which really constrains things, right? Opening up the lanes here, right, and allowing things to be innovated in this country is going to create a 10-time multiplier. Like some of the things in Fit 21 where there's a safe harbor, where you can do something for a period of time without being worried you're going to get sued or go to jail, right? Like instead of encouraging entrepreneurs, you're threatening them, right?
Right.
Just that safe harbor and allowing the innovation to happen, that's phenomenal. Then they're actually going to encourage it. It's not, if you do things in a decentralized way, it won't be governed by the SEC. It'll be governed by the CFTC, right? Which is a commodity at the end of the day,
right? Which
opens up that lane. And then you got the bigger promises of capital gains and all that kind of stuff. It's, if a fraction of that passes,
right?
We're talking about a Cambrian explosion, right? And then it's about traditional finance, right? They're not going to step into our waters. The Blackrock, Larry Fink was an innovator to do it, right? But they had to wrap it in a traditional wrapper to do it the way they wanted to do it. Now you're removing that. So, they're building a stock exchange in Dallas, right? Where I'm based from.
Is that Omni?
I forgot the name of it. It's them and Citadel. BlackRock, Citadel are kind of competing with the New York Stock Exchange.
I remember one being, I think one was called Omni. But it was kind of like an internal thing.
No, this is huge. This is they're looking to compete with the New York Stock Exchange.
Okay. So this is going to be the tokenized asset exchange eventually?
They're not actually revealing that stuff.
Okay. But it probably is.
BlackRock's behind it, Citadel's behind it.
So it probably is.
I'm assuming there'll be something there, right? Yeah. Like why not use that? It's faster, cheaper.
Why would Larry Fink be putting out these narratives about tokenized assets and real world assets and everything else, and then he's a part of this new exchange and it not touch on any of that? I don't see that happening.
Could you imagine you open up an exchange that, and I'm not saying this is what they're going to do, but just imagine 24/7 trading, faster, cheaper, secure,
right?
Not the New York Stock Exchange and
that itself is archaic now.
It's archaic.
It's so old school.
If you ask companies what they need to do to IPO, it's just you have to comply with this, and then the ESG stuff, the DEI stuff, and this. And if you don't do this, you're not going to get listed.
But isn't the ESG and DEI and all of that also kind of a spawn of BlackRock?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, are you destroying this side to benefit this other side that you stand to gain much more from? How does that work?
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, good point. Good point. Since when do corporations have to be kind of self-consistent with their?
Well, I mean, if you really want to make sure that you're a big winner in the game, you want to control the fighter that you paid to lose,
right? So
that this other new up and coming fighter can make his championship reign and go undefeated, and make you a lot more money, right? Like that's the way I see it.
It's plausible, right? I don't know. I don't know any of these people. I'm not inside the beast. I have no idea how it works in practice, but things like this have happened in the past. Companies do this, right?
I wonder how much of this has been simulated on Aladdin, so they can say, "Oh, you know what? If we do this and this over here,
rabbit hole."
Yeah, I know.
Aladdin's a great. Have you ever watched this documentary called Hyper Normalization?
No, but I'm going to now.
You have to watch this.
Okay.
It's a BBC reporter. It goes down these rabbit holes.
Hyper Normalization?
Yes.
Okay. Noted.
Yeah, watch it.
Okay.
It talks about Aladdin. It talks basically the premise is, and this is an old documentary, that technology and finance have become so powerful that nation states and governments no longer control the world. Finance and big tech controls the world, and all they're doing is creating narratives to keep it look like they're still in control.
Gotcha.
And it's called hypernormal because they create a fiction that is now...
Tell a lie enough times, it becomes the truth of everyone.
Exactly.
Right.
It's so prescient to what we've seen in the past 5 or 10 years.
Isn't it?
Yeah. It's like...
Didn't work, though.
Yeah. Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope.
Fingers crossed, right? Yeah. Fingers crossed, right? Let's hope it didn't work. But yeah, there is that stuff going on, right? Where... Alladin is an interesting one because they spoke about that.
I'm fascinated by Alladin and everything. Honestly, I've always been.
And what's the 2024 version of Alladin? What's that look like? Like Alladin is like what, 40 years old or something like that? It's like
yeah, but I mean, I'm sure that there are new systems that probably aren't public in use already. 100%. If I were to guess,
oh, no, I would bet everything on that 100%.
Right.
With the AI that's public being this powerful, what about the non-public AI with the the nuclear power plant and the data center somewhere?
Exactly. I feel like it's like government military stuff, right? Like we're only seeing the shit that was operational 30 years ago.
Exactly.
Nobody's putting all their cards on the public table immediately. Like if it has to be almost irrelevant before we hear about it.
Did you ever hear about the Flash Boys?
No.
So it's the high frequency trading stuff that was happening in Wall Street when tech started getting so big that the algorithms and the high frequency trading was outdoing regular people.
Okay.
And
I mean, I'm familiar with the high frequency trading groups.
There was a scandal around it, but at the time where I was working at CSC and Dell, they would get down to the point.
Are you responsible for my shitty Alienware computer by chance? Who do I call and complain about that?
I can give you Michael Dell's number if you want to call him directly. He's a great guy, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great. Yeah. I love my time there. Michael Dell was a great guy. But I remember at the time that integrating circuits to like make less nanometers so that you can get the trading faster. And I think the Flash Boys was that they built data centers right next to where the exchange was. Like the miles and the kilometers and the meters, the closer you get to exchange would make a difference in your advantage on the market. Now imagine that with AI. Right. Imagine that with we're entering a new realm here. It's this I'm sure they've got systems that,
when I think about that grand picture between AI, high frequency trading, you name it, any of that, the tokenization of all real world assets. Imagine a world where literally everything is tradable 24/7 on an exchange.
Yeah.
And then how much more power does a company like BlackRock or Vanguard or any of these guys, how much more power and money do they stand to gain from a transition from where we're at to where we're going?
I mean, and it could be winner takes all, right? Mm-hmm. It could be winner takes all. The one person that gets there first gets the first.
Pretty sure we know who's first at this point.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, some of the stuff scares me because, in the wrong hands, the kind of power, I mean, honestly, I love Elon Musk, but even the kind of power he's wielding now can be a little scary to me because as long as it's used for the public good, great. But what happens if he what happens if he gets hit by a cyber truck and all of a sudden his noodle's not working right anymore and he just decides to have a really bad month?
Yeah.
It's like, the hell with all you peasants. I control the world. And it's just like anyone having that amount of power kind of freaks me out.
I agree. And the other part of it is the social media side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, like Zuckerberg, he's got access to the most powerful sentiment engine in the world.
Right.
Like how many billion people are on Facebook?
Mm-hmm.
And he knows the sentiment. He knows what people are feeling, what people are talking about, and all the rest of it. I had our legal counsel, Preston Byrne, we had a discussion about this, and we're talking to a few people about it. Somebody mentioned that you saw that Zuckerberg put that letter out before Trump won.
Right, of course.
Hey, I'm sorry we did this with the FBI and all that kind of stuff. And somebody
sorry we jumped you in that alley. Can we be friends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had Bezos too that kind of held back on endorsement and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, Amazon, they've got access to the most powerful sentiment engines. They probably knew where the election was going 2 months before it actually happened. Right? They've got access to that level of information. Mm-hmm. So when they start doing stuff, they're front running potentially. I'm not saying this is true, right? I'm not.
I think I know where you're going with this, and I bet it is.
Yeah, it's like they know what's happening 3 months before because the sentiment starts shifting in their social networks, right?
A friend of mine actually built a company around trading traditional stock market based on social sentiment.
Yeah.
And with blazing accuracy.
Wow.
So and he does very well. He lives in Florida now.
Yeah.
We were friends back when I lived in Cincinnati, and they lived in Louisville. And yeah, I mean, he's shown me, like, you know, the accuracy of their trading based on social sentiment alone, primarily Twitter, as a matter of fact.
Sure.
And it's just, it's unbelievable. So when you mix all of those together, especially, but when you take that to another level though, or a different place, when you think about it, even politically, all of these people who are obviously batting for the same side,
Yeah.
all of those systems, tools, sentiment, all of that still didn't seem to help them that much when you consider the grand overflow of, you know, I guess you could say anti-adoption of those narratives. So
Yeah, I think
there's still hope.
Yeah, I think the human soul or the human consciousness, right? People themselves, I think the masses, that's why I'm still a big believer in actual democracy.
Mm-hmm.
I actually believe in it, is because I think the masses, people, one thing they're good at, they know when something's off.
Right.
The instinct, right?
Most people.
No, the crowd, the wisdom of the crowd, right?
Right.
As a crowd, especially if it's been done for like decades, right? Like, well, this feels wrong. What you said and what's happening is different. What you said and what actually somebody said is not the same.
Why is it every time you're pointing the finger, someone from your camp is getting busted for doing it?
Yeah, exactly.
Or there's a new article, or there's something else that's coming out that's saying, this is exactly what you're doing, but you want me to demonize this person because you're saying they're going to do this?
Yeah.
That doesn't strike me as right.
And like people like yourself and the new media podcasts, new ways of just getting information, right? And yes, there's probably a lot of misinformation in it as well, but you know, I think we don't give people enough credit to like weed through it and understand and try and learn. But now there are new sources of data and information that can counteract the narrative of the government and the state. Now, I'm not saying the government and the state is evil, right? Because I don't believe that, because I work for government people. Most humans are good people.
I agree.
Yeah. What problem is institutionalization and systems can go systems actually corrupt. It's inevitable. You get a system, it becomes too powerful, it corrupts. You need to reset it. That's
exactly right.
Yeah.
You need to reset it.
Yeah, it's a nature of systems.
I feel like everybody enters government or politics with a true mission to change worlds, to better people's lives, to make a difference. But I feel like the longer somebody is in office, the more deals they've had to make.
Yeah.
I'll give you this, you give me that. I owe you one, you owe me one.
Right.
All of that. And over years and years and years, you just become corrupt. You wake up one day and realize you've really shaved off all your skin.
That's right.
And you've got nothing left. And now you're in a house of cards, and you have to keep piling this stuff on or it's just going to implode, which is ultimately how I think people continue pushing forward with this shit, and it gets worse and worse over time.
Yeah.
And term limits is a really big deal for me.
100%.
And I'm ready for a dramatic change, like a real change, not bring us change. But, anytime I saw, a threat to our democracy, I immediately always took that as a threat to our control.
Yes.
And it was demonstrated time and time and time again. And I do believe that, more people are inherently zeroed in and capable of seeing good for good and bad for bad. Right. And, I'm just so ready. I mean, I was going through kind of a depression, man, where I was just like, the world is shit. Everything's getting worse.
Yeah.
I don't know where to look.
And it was a feeling, right?
It's a feeling, a gut feeling. And it was shared by so many that watch my videos. Yeah. Like, man, I'm glad you said something, because I feel it too. It's just this dark, toxic energy. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's like we're feeling it one way, but the other side is feeling the opposite side of that, where they're being trained to believe something else is going on. Yeah. But they're feeling the same energy and they're reacting to it, but they're being told it's something else.
So I'm not a partisan, like left and right.
I'm not either. I think it goes both ways, back and forth.
And I've lived in countries that have vastly different systems, like Canada, and then France, and then the UK, and then Denmark, and the United States, and so forth. And I got this taught like super early in Canada when I was growing up in a public school, and they're like, here's the spectrum, left and right. You know, this is what the left is about. This is what the right is about. In the center, things work well. When you go to the extremes, they both become authoritarian.
Exactly.
So I'm far more concerned about the authoritarian axis, freedom axis, than I am about right and left. Right. So I think
very good point.
I think the biggest mistakes the Democrats did in this cycle, if I may make a political commentary,
sure.
I don't really care, is not being democratic. Like Bernie Sanders probably would have run away with this thing. Like if they let an anti-establishment person take actual candidate, right? They pushed away the populists, which is what the people wanted. They wanted a change, something to change. Now, I'm also worried about breaking too many things, right? You can do that as well, because the government does do a lot of things that we take for granted all the stuff they do well and really focus on all the stuff they do badly, right? Like, I'm living a great life in the United States, right? I immigrated here 10 years ago, and the opportunity that I've had economically, the raising my family, the access to schools, all that kind of stuff as an educated person has been phenomenal, far greater than I had in Europe, right? And Europe is a more socialistic, state controlled, and so forth, right? So I don't want to, get too much into politics, because a lot of things are working well. Clean water.
Hey man, I did 6 months in Puerto Rico and came back screaming. So I know what you mean.
Go up the list of like basic needs and they do it. So let's not break that or breaking the stuff we need to break. That's the only thing I'm worried about right now.
Right.
But I think the people were like, enough is enough.
Right.
Right. And I felt the same thing. I was like, it's just like, I'm just not feeling good right now.
And for the record, that's not a knock against Puerto Ricans. There's a difference. Puerto Rico itself as an island was not that much fun for someone like me who needs electricity consistently. And, it was
that Tony Hitchcliff.
We spent a month bathing in our pool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it was just every day it was something else.
Right.
So yeah, I actually loved a lot about Puerto Rico, but if you're trying to live the lifestyle you're used to living in the U.S., costs a lot of money to be able to kind of,
because it's missing the infrastructure, right? It's missing, electricity is not reliable, right? It's got a lot of storms. It doesn't have the resources to really fix what they need to fix.
Because every time money comes into the island to help everybody, it's squandered or stolen.
There's the corruption side.
The corruption is disgusting, which is a big part of like what really drove me out. I'm like, this is just terrible.
So, and then you go to Dubai, for example, right, where we set up our labs in Abu Dhabi, right, where you got a bit of another extreme. There's a super well run, but also very controlled society, right?
I've watched a lot of stuff on the underbellies of that, though. You don't want to talk about any of that if you got businesses over there, but I have no ties to the Middle East or any of those places.
So this is what the point I'm trying to make is that the government in this country does a lot of things right and a lot of things wrong, and don't break the right stuff.
The way I honestly see it, though, is I feel like one side that does something for the people says, okay, now you owe us more control. Yeah. And the other side's, we're going to do this. We're all going to benefit together.
Right.
I wrote something recently on Facebook is, there's so many people that are, let's just say disappearing themselves because they're so traumatically, distraught about the election outcome. And, they're so bought into so many of these narratives. And I basically said, listen, your groceries are going to get a little cheaper. Like your life is going to get a little bit easier. A lot of these narratives are being projected to you because you're a willing candidate to absorb them and like act on them. The election is over. Let go of those narratives because they played their role. They didn't work. It's back to normal. Give it a year and you're going to see that a lot of this stuff is nonsense.
Right.
And,
always hold the government to account.
Always hold the government to account. Because I did say, listen, after this administration, like, who knows? Because now if the public faith is put so deeply in the right, to make all these positive changes, well, then that too will be
exactly,
what's the word I'm looking for, but taken advantage of.
That's right.
And that's why the pendulum swings back and forth. Today, they're the bad guys. Today, they're the good guys. And it just goes back and forth. And there are always operatives in the middle that are willing to play whichever side is going to benefit them the most.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's always about keeping an open mind and never buying too deeply in any particular narrative, or you're going to be used for it.
Think independently.
Exactly. Think independently with critical thought, which is really programmed out of as many people as possible today.
I got lucky with my education for some reason. The public,
I'm uneducated, so I don't know shit about any of that.
School system, starting in Canada, I had a great public school system throughout, and I remember taking a course specifically about this, about the bias in media.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so simple. It's like, okay, they're giving you a message, but who's paying for the message? Find out who the payers are, and the message is going to be biased towards the people that pay for the message. Mm-hmm. It's very simple, just like toolkit to and then just the past 10 years, things have gone out of control because new forms of media have disrupted the legacy media, right? And now the legacy media is captured by a few interests. Mm-hmm. And therefore, when you're listening to them, you're listening to those interests. It's as simple as that. They're not lying. They're omitting more than they're lying. Sometimes they're lying, but they get caught out when they lie, and there's consequences to actually lying in certain cases. So just who's behind them, and you're listening to what they want you to hear. That's it. Just look at it that way. So if you're watching CNN, then pharma's a big thing behind it, right? Mm-hmm. If pick your media source, right?
Right.
It's just like, and somebody had said that politicians, they should be wearing patches of the brands that are sponsoring them.
They should, like fighters, like the old UFC where everybody had their own sponsors. And
there's something honest about that.
Absolutely.
As long as you disclose,
exactly.
Say, hey, listen, and therefore, but then you can't be paid by an interest, mm-hmm. then not be critical of that interest, and then expect to be taken as the source of truth.
Right.
Simple.
Right.
For me, it's very simple, and it's nonpartisan because both sides do it. It's
absolutely
all over map, right, and so forth. I hope there's a real change that's coming. I really do. Let's hope for the best, but stay critical of it.
Let's get through inauguration, and then we'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not too fond of this whole missile thing.
I've lived in the United States for 10 years, raised my family here, and it's been a phenomenal experience. Mm-hmm. I live in Texas, in Capel, near Dallas, and it's been great. I've had a great life here. Mm-hmm. So as long as you take the noise out of the way and just work, just work hard.
Right.
Work hard, try, work with like-minded people. And the US is still probably the best place in the world to be a business person. Right. And I'm hopeful in that respect, because when I just get the noise out, I'm like, well, how much of this is really affecting my day to day? Almost nothing, except I ignore certain sources of media now, and I listen to other sources that I trust more, and I have a different diet of media sources. That's about it.
I found myself watching a lot of, won't even name them, but some of the crazier media outlets, only so that I knew what nonsense people I might debate would throw at me.
Right.
Because I feel like they got the majority of their talking points from the daily news or like whatever medium they're watching on a regular basis. And so it's like to have the group of people out there that so passionately are indoctrinated into these messages, and then in a debate form or a back and forth conversation, even you already know before they say a word what they're going to say. All you have to do is watch the news that day, and that's going to be their argument. Because I used to actively get into what I would consider friendly debates with people that absolutely adamantly opposed everything I believed in.
Right.
Because I've always been very open to a different perspective. I want to know what you think.
Of course.
But I always looked at it from, how do we come to a term of agreement, where whether it's to agree to disagree or just you teach me something that I'm not privy to because maybe my own bubble is incorrect or my own algorithms are out to lunch. Show me, but I've got to be honest, and nobody's ever been able to do that. I mean, in years. And I've had, there's a friend of mine who he's since gone silent on me. But he does $500,000 a year in cybersecurity and just hardcore, liberal, and we would have these daily back and forths on Telegram, And, he's a smart guy, but when it came to a lot of this stuff, I was always dumbfounded by what he was willing to believe.
Yeah.
And it just never made any sense to me. And so
that's a great point. I mean, what I'm most worried,
but he would get violent. Like he'd get really angry about stuff.
Because what ends up happening is that you identify with the idea as if it's you. So you're attacking the idea, you're attacking me personally.
Exactly. That's so true.
That's not what it is.
Right.
Like we're just having an argument. My biggest worry is in a two-party system that they need the problems to keep existing, to keep that division.
I consider it a laser pointer.
Yeah. So
your trigger points. Here's your trigger point. Go run to this.
And there's like what? I'm not going to list them because we're going to go down a rabbit hole, but there's 10 topics that the sides really get angry about.
Right.
Emotionally attached to. Right. What's the incentive for any one party to really solve it meaningfully?
Right. There is none.
Because then they can't keep it as a point of contention. Right?
Exactly.
I think that's one of the big problems of the two-party system, right? Like
100% agree.
So, and this is why I'm not a partisan, because I lived in very socialist countries that were well run, capitalist countries, everything in between. And it's about the quality of the people that are governing and how they're doing it. And I think parliamentary systems often can be better at that because they have multiple parties. So they can divide the opinions into different batches. So I don't think anybody actually in this country buys in the entire platform on one side or the other. They're probably like somewhere here, some here, etc. The parliamentary system, there's more parties that kind of
fill out the middle ground. Right.
My biggest worry is that they want to perpetuate the problems because that's what keeps them in power. Right. Instead of just solving them, like so many countries have solved these problems. Just said, this is what it is. We're not going to re-debate this. Right. And then you could come back to government control versus private control. And where is the right cursor there? Right. Like too much government control becomes inefficient.
Right.
Enterprise can't thrive. You don't get innovation, but more people get access to healthcare and education and the rest of it. Right. And if you go too far, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just.
I think that the way things are set up though now, I had a gentleman, he flew in from China, actually. This is when I was in Tampa, and super cool dude. And we talked for a while because he was with an exchange, and we had this great talk, but he had his phone, sitting on the desk or I think we were at Panera Bread, and he had his phone sitting there, and we started talking about politics a little bit. And because I asked him, I'm like, what is it really like in China? Yeah. As it relates to blockchain, as it relates to security and identity and all of that stuff. And, he basically laid it out for me, like, obviously, China controls everything, and,
state control.
Yeah.
100% state.
100%. Like if you have a job, it's probably for the government. Yeah. If you make $100,000 a year, you're considered wealthy. Yeah. And everything is monitored. Anything and everything you do is monitored. They know everything. And I would notice him kind of like speaking away from his phone. It was some of the things he would say. And then he would lean into his phone anytime he was like, but we all love it. Like one of the things he told me is, listening. Yeah. Oh, it's listening to him. I got that. He didn't say it, of course. And he didn't let me know exactly, but I could tell based off of the way he was acting, I want my government to hear this. I don't really want them to hear this, and it was just a very odd, and I think at one point towards the end, I'm like, your phone listens to you, right? And he's like, and I'm like, okay, I get it. So, but yeah,
the Roomba listens to you.
Everything does now, right? But it was kind of scary in the sense that one of the things that I talked about with Cardano is how I've said this now for years, that just the system itself I could see very effectively being used for voting and for government systems like that. And I've always thought that if I'm thinking of true democracy, right? Because I read a lot of stuff about technocracy, right, which always freaks me out. But a part of me feels that a big part of our political system right now is a bit of a technocracy. Yeah. We've never labeled it that much. When you've got people like Bill Gates Fauci, Elon Musk, even like a lot of these really powerful billionaire players that are basically dictating to everyone. That's basically a fucking technocracy, folks. Like, we're given the illusion of a democracy because we're able to vote for this person to stand in the Oval Office and read the teleprompter. But ultimately, it's these other people that are making these decisions for everyone. Right. So, and a lot of that is focused on money. And I thought if we really wanted a true democracy, everybody has an app or everybody has a cell phone. Yeah. Anytime they're trying to pass a bill, that bill should be no more than 2 pages. It should only be a bill relevant to what the bill is about. We can't name it "We Love Pigs," but it's like an anti-stray cat movement and, sending billions of dollars to like Georgia because they have a sewage problem. Like, it should be give everybody the opportunity to read it, incentivize everybody to read it on the blockchain, right? And utilize this technology that we have to everybody vote on these bills. We don't really need to put all of these career politicians in a position of power over us when we could all very easily and effectively now with the technology we have empower ourselves to vote on what we think and what we believe in. Take all of the corporate media out of it. Take all of let us educate ourselves. You want to teach us about what these things mean and share opinions on it? Fine. Educate us, let's have a 24/7 stream about the world and everything going on in it so that we can better understand how our voting might impact this situation or that situation.
That's a great way to put it.
I would love to see something like that happen.
Yeah. So I love the way you put it. And this goes back to authoritarian versus freedom, right? Right. And this is, I think, the core reason why I love blockchain. It's freedom technology.
Exactly.
It's decentralized technology. The internet too. Used correctly.
Right.
But
until you're banned and censored and shut down and canceled. Yeah,
exactly. So I think ultimately that's what blockchain is. That's what it's supposed to be, freedom technology. And that's where my energy's at, right? Is that give people options, give people freedom, give them economic choice. And people are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, generally speaking, right? Is what I believe. And I think that's why we're doing it. Now we're taking a slightly different approach, as we mentioned. We're pragmatists in the rest of it. And once we're successful, we could start getting back into innovation. That'd be a great way to kind of our trajectory, right? But I think just to summarize quickly about communities, we're serving the communities. We're serving the Bitcoin community. We're serving the Cardano community. We're serving Polygon Ethereum community. We're serving these communities. We're giving them something they don't have today that's novel, that creates more connections, that creates value. That's really what we're about. Great political talk, by the way. I love it.
Yeah, I figured why not? Yeah, so what would be the number one rebuttal to anybody that says why did you launch Apex in what would be considered by some in this world of tribalism a competitor? So for anyone that obviously looks at Cardano and maybe they're Cardano maxis or they're major proponents of Cardano and all the change it's likely to bring to across multiple verticals in our world right now, some will say, oh, well, you took the base of Cardano, you made some changes and you've relaunched it or you're relaunching it.
Sure.
What do you say to the people that just think that you're just trying to make a buck? Like, because there are those out there.
So I would highly recommend they reread the Cardano white paper and the ethos of open source, right? This is exactly what the intention is, right? Like, would you like it better that people do not use Cardano technology to build something new because we love the tech? Is that what I don't understand what the counter argument is, to be honest, right? And, Polygon is embracing it. All the other chains are embracing it. They're like, yes, use our tech, build with using our tech because it's better for everybody. And then they're looking at aggregating and making it all work together and being more foundational and so forth. So I just don't buy it. I don't buy it as an argumentation. Now, I can understand why people think that, right? I could get the sentiment behind it. The only thing I could say is that we're here for the long run. We're here to build and create adoption. That's what we want to do. And we're putting all our firepower behind that. We're setting ourselves up to do that. So I would argue against it because what's the counter argument? Don't use the open source code. Don't, be inspired by the Cardano white paper. If you go back to read that, it talks about a lot of stuff we're talking about. Don't be inspired by what other projects are doing and don't build. Is that what the alternative is? I don't see what the counter argument is, right?
Well, and I think too that some people don't understand. Like, what would you say is the amount of money? A lot of people think, somebody could say, oh, well, they just took Cardano's base code and they're, all the open source systems and everything, and then they're just expanding on it or making their changes. But people seem to think that comes free. Like, what has been the investment to date to build Apex to where it's at?
So we raised $6 million, right? So that's the investment that's going to get us past launch and probably a bit further than that, and get us to sustainability. So it's been around that amount of money. Like, there's no other source of funding and so forth. There is an innovation here, right? How to make them work together. I think the reactor bridge is a great example of an innovation, because then when you start with the base, that's been proven, right? Like, forget Cardano being battle tested; it's been war tested, right? It's like, how many cycles have they gone through,
right?
And tried to be taken down and so forth, right? Like, it's a high compliment to use Cardano,
sure.
Right? And the innovation is, how do you make it work together? And I've described it. And then the other part is, how are we serving the Cardano community? Like, how are we getting that going? By creating these bridges and getting it all working together, we're quite keen about stablecoin liquidity, which I know has been one of the pain points of Cardano, right? So we're going to help get more liquidity into the ecosystem, right? So these are the way that we're kind of, and I just don't buy the competition line, right? This is not the ethos of our ecosystem. It's not. It's the opposite. And then somebody takes our code and then does something else, fantastic. Go for it. We would love that, right? So I think it's the opposite. I think we're very much in line with the ethos and the culture, ultimately.
Outside of that, what is there any direct benefit to Cardano or Cardano token holders or any of that? Is there any direct benefit to them as Apex grows?
Yes. So first of all, we're recognizing the technology that we're using, and can't get into too much details because of legalese, and we've got to figure it out and the rest of it. But our intention is to airdrop the Cardano, right? Is that if you're a Cardano holder, if you're a participant in our ecosystem, you will get tokens. And that is kind of a form of payment for all the work that's been done from Cardano, right? And that's, I think, the way it should be done, right? We're using the tech that you, blood, sweat, and tears built. And by the way, I did too for 4 years, right? And the people in Apex Fusion did as well, right? We're talking about the people that helped build Cardano, including myself, including the people that are building the core tech, right? And our way to give back is to give tokens and say, hey.
So Cardano holders are going to get Apex airdrops at launch.
We have to figure it out legally because the reputation system and so forth, but that's the intention, right?
Okay.
Let me just tell you that.
Fair enough.
To be clear, right? Our intention is to reward Cardano holders because we're using Cardano-based tech. And it's going to be the same for Polygon holders as well. We're going through all the legal stuff around this. Airdrops are very contentious and how they get done and so forth. So I can't. Right. That's the intention. All right. Let me just leave it there. Right. And
so in some form, it's likely
yes,
post inauguration.
Yeah. So maybe it's maybe it could be that you are a Cardano holder, you get a reputation score out of the gate. Maybe that's the easiest way to go about it. Right. This is why I'm not getting into details.
I get that. Yeah.
Let's say but we will recognize that. We will recognize that we've built off technology that came from the Cardano community. We are part of the Cardano community.
Right.
We are not separate from the Cardano. I was chief commercial for 4 years helping build out Cardano, right? Our chief product officer, Sava Savic, was one of the core guys that delivered Shelly, right? Our CTO, Vlad, is one of the guys who delivered Polygon Edge. Our CEO from the foundation, Ivan Belagic, was one of the guys who delivered Polygon Edge. To say we're not part of the community, no, we help build the technology, right? So we will give back, right? This is what we're going to do, right? We're going to make sure that Cardano benefits from this, and we're serving these communities ultimately. And then what would be great is one day that there'll be unique dApps, unique use cases built on ours that then go to Cardano. Why not?
Right.
Of course, that should be the case. So just like dApps invested on building on Cardano, and therefore they have to invest less to build on us, the reverse can happen. Someone builds on us, puts the investment, we help them with that investment, and so forth. Go to Cardano. We're not going to be the guys that say, first of all, who are the guys? It's a decentralized ecosystem, right?
Right.
Who's the person, right? Like, yes, I'm coming here as the CEO of the labs. Yes, we were one of the original 5-10 people that started it and all the rest of it. But after a certain point, and a certain point is quickly, who's I, right? It's a decentralized community. The community decides and will tell us what they want, right? So I just push against it. I think it's old world thinking or legacy thinking in the Web3 world. If you know.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And you're right. I everybody believes that they need to be a part of one camp or another. And it's like, you know, I think that the more interoperable everything becomes and the more we start, you know, like even Cardano and the relationships it's starting to build now with XRP and just all these different groups. It's like, that's what the whole point was initially. That was one of the reasons I was so initially excited about it.
Exactly.
It's the interoperability between all of these chains working together for a common goal to benefit the sovereignty of the people.
That's right.
And that's what I'm here for.
That's right.
So, you know, when I see a lot of the tribalism, it's like, like I pointed out earlier, I don't give two shits about Solana. I only care about the messaging sometimes, right?
Sure.
I don't care that it exists or that people have fun with it. I hope everybody makes billions of dollars with it. Yeah. Doesn't make me not want to point out some of the red flags to help people in my community and others at least know what to watch for, right? There's a difference there. It's not that I'm trying to hate. It's just that I call it as I see it. There are a lot of Cardano projects I think are shit, but it is what it is, you know?
So you know when I had the aha moment is when I left IOG. When I left IOG, I had an aha moment that said, I left IOG, but I didn't leave Cardano.
Right.
That's like,
right.
That was it. Right?
Yeah.
You don't leave you choose to leave. You don't get kicked out or you don't, you know, like I left Dell. I'm no longer a Dell employee. I don't consider myself in any way associated with Dell. Right. And when I was employing, I felt that way. In Web3, it's such a liberating thing, right? Is I left the company, but I didn't leave the ecosystem.
Right.
What a fabulous thing. What a phenomenal thing, right? And now I've been able to live off of it and continue to live off of it. And very happy to see what's happening with ADA. It's just like everybody else.
Right.
I saw one of the questions about Bitcoin. Maybe get some.
Yeah, that's what I was going to start.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, I had one. I think my first. Basically, the question is relevant to BitcoinOS, obviously. Now that all of this stuff is happening because of the UTXO model between Bitcoin and Cardano, obviously Apex sharing the same thing.
Yes.
Are there any talks or are there any plans for an integration that way?
I'm a big fan of Yago, the CEO of BitcoinOS and so forth. When I saw that, I was like, awesome. I was telling I was like, that's exactly what they should be doing. It's great. It's what we've kind of pitched in our whole right from the first pitch decks was that, right? I'm like, awesome, that's great. So something I'd be willing to explore. The only difference in positioning and approach is my understanding is BitcoinOS has not been built yet, right? It's being built, and this is where the expansion thing comes into play. Cardano, there is no competition. They will continue to innovate. They're going to continue to be this nuclear power engine of trying out new things. And BitcoinOS being this trustless bridge to Bitcoin, because right now all the Bitcoin stuff is centralized, right? Wow, right? But we will not deploy something like that until it's been proven, tested, been in the market for a few years, right? That's just the way we work, right? So can't disclose, but we're talking to more established players in the Bitcoin space that do scalability and bridging, right? Ones that have been around for a while, battle tested, gone through the paces. That's our strategy. That's our ethos, right? So that's the way we would do things differently. I love Bitcoin. I saw it. I was like, I'm buying some more ADA.
Right.
Yeah. I love it. I thought that was re-energized. I thought that was great. Right. But we don't do it that way. Right. Maybe at some point when we got our war chest, and we can start doing innovative stuff and make bets that maybe 10 years in the future, we'll start doing things like that. But
the thing of it is, too, is that to my understanding, Charles didn't know that it was coming either. You know,
even better. That's
right. He had no idea it was being built. I think he found out with everyone else when it was announced, and he's like, "Well, son of a bitch, I got to dive back into this and figure out what's going on."
That's great,
and that's kind of the beauty of a decentralized system.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Is that people can build. People can do whatever the hell they think is going to help the ecosystem or help this ecosystem.
So cool.
Yeah, I watched the video of him talking about it. He's like, I had no idea this was a thing. And now he's all excited again about Bitcoin and he said he was going to start having reading parties for code. And I'm like, what a nerd.
Yeah. When I saw that announcement, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
That was the original, that's part of our middleware between Bitcoin and Ethereum using best in class technology. Right. And when I saw, I'm like, yes, like that was like a validation, right. Of the thought process. And the question is how we do things differently. I'd reach out to Yago and so forth, but we don't really want to deploy stuff that's in an innovation stage, right? We wanted something that's gone through a few cycles, that's been battle tested, war tested, the rest of it. That's the way we would do it. Or we would sandbox it and say, not ready for prime time beta, whatever, and so forth, right? So
and if it's proven to work on Cardano, though, you really think it takes a few cycles or a few years even to get enough trust to understand that it would be beneficial?
Unless it's like slam dunk cryptographically, like, I don't know, like something where it's like so rock solid Fort Knox, then yes. That was the general idea is let's wait to be proven out for over a few cycles, right? Yeah. This is the whole thing with Solana. Solana, in my view, has not been proven because it still falls over. And it's not enough for it not to fall over for a year. Right. I think it needs to not fall over for 10 years.
Right, exactly. Right? Or never.
Yeah, or
primarily.
No, but like enough time you're like, okay, this is never going to happen again. Right. So that's the ethos. Battle tested means that in my view. Now, could we alter the definition where something is obviously secure or, something else? I don't know. Right. But that's kind of where we're going. So we're in talks.
But at the same time, there isn't anybody stopping someone from building it, whether you want them to or not.
Oh, exactly.
If they find value in Apex, there's a good chance somebody just might build the shit.
You're right. You're 100% right. I didn't think of it that way. But let's say as the labs, right? As the CEO of the labs, we wouldn't do that. That would be another labs that would do that. Right. And this is where the dev partners like, Tenderly, Eternal, MVP Workshop, and all the others that come along with us, we're already starting kind of decentralized, right? And we're like saying we're building with a bunch of partners and we're happy for them to build on a decentralized system. That's the whole point, right? So that's excellent point. Excellent point. You got me back in thinking old think, right?
That's why I make the big bucks.
Right? So as Howlate, as kind of the technology company that started it, we will not deploy untested tech. If other people would do that, of course we can't control it, right? So of course they could do it. It's an excellent point.
So what are some of the ways that the community, out there, let's say, people get it. Sure. And there are people that they see this the same way I do, where they're like, to a large extent, in some regard, especially talking to Armando for so long, this is almost kind of like an homage to Cardano and everything that it's bringing to the table and trying to expand on that and not necessarily compete with that ecosystem, but expand upon it and continue to grow it.
Right.
But what do you say to people that understand the mission and want to play some sort of role in it?
So I saw the question. I'm going to get the guys to put like a quick guide on Twitter just to get you going. But basically, follow us on Apex Fusion. You can get information there on the website and on Discord and on Telegram. There are all the links there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them just to put a quick guide because I'd rather have it pinned somewhere where it's super, super obvious, right? Sure. Right now, we've got about 88 stake pool operators. We're in testnet. We need more stake pool operators. That's the first community we'd like to kind of join in. The developers of dApps, we have a few already built on ours. We got Eternal for the wallet. Charlie 3 is in our testnet. We have a few of the DEXs that are coming on board and so forth. So the dApps, please come over. Devs, Discord is probably the better medium for that. And for individuals, the reputation system is the main starting point. So that's getting launched over the next couple of months, sooner rather than later. And that's just open a wallet, start using the reputation system, start learning, basically have a bunch of games, learning about us and how it gets started so that when we launch, you're kind of getting a reputation score you can start from. So that's for the individuals, ultimately. And if there's VCs out there, we are open to a strategic round before we launch. We don't need it, but we're open to getting some more finances before we launch so that we can beef up our socials and get our message out there and all that kind of stuff, which is the primary thing we would use it for. Otherwise, we'll just launch a thing and build organically, which may be better at the end anyways. So
personally, I think it would be. It's a harder road, as we've seen with Cardano after all these years. But I definitely think there's something a little more pure about it at the same time.
There is. I'm a big fan of that, right? But there's realities too.
Yeah.
Right? Like a little bit of extra.
Nothing's free.
Yeah, a little bit of extra marketing would help us. You know, I'd like to be on more of these. Like, this is the first one I'm doing. You're the premiere, the first podcast I'm doing.
Yay!
So, because you just got it right away, and I just also want to.
Well, I do happen to know about 300 other YouTubers personally, so I can put in a word for you.
Yeah, so I'm open. Get some other people, leaders in Apex Fusion, to also get out there and start talking and just get the word out organically would be my ideal scenario here. I'd love to do it that way, and hopefully that works. But we're a business, of course, and if there's, again, I don't want it to be gimmicky. I don't want it to be that stuff, right? But and it's the foundation that actually controls the marketing side, not me from the lab's perspective. But a little bit more money to get the word out there. It's just the way business works, right? There's no other way around it.
And nobody paid me for this interview, just so you guys know. This isn't a paid segment.
This is true. This is true. And thank you so much for that. So so that's basically it from how to get involved. And just look out. We'll put a quick guide pinned on Apex Fusion. Follow us on Apex Fusion on Twitter.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's all the questions, I think, because we've covered so much inadvertently that I think it all, is there anything else that you wanted to address?
Well, I'm going to be the nerd and look at my notes.
You be the nerd. I don't have any.
I got some notes here, some things I wanted to get across. I think I covered everything.
Yeah.
The UTXO and account-based stuff is interesting.
Okay.
And I think that's something that's going to become more and more of a discussion over time. Kind of what we said about use cases that I think UTXO is underutilized, right? And I'm not certain if this is the case, but I also think it's less prone to MEV issues as well, right? I think that's the case.
Yeah.
Right? So MEV is a big issue topic, and the rest of it in the account-based space. So I guess the message out there is that people who are on the other side, on the account-based side, look into UTXO. There's a UTXO alliance that's in place, and all these kinds of things. Like that aha moment that the guys from Ethereum had looking at UTXO, because they never bothered to look at it as a serious. They just thought it's just Bitcoin and we're doing our thing. I think the UTXO has a lot of advantages, which are quite cool. One of the guys from the UTXO Alliance was describing with waiters and tips and did this whole thing, which I can never re-say, but or figure out exactly how it was put, but. I think it's something like it's count based. It's you need to know how much money you have, and then the balance goes down or balance goes up. So you always in the transaction need to know how much money someone has. Whereas UTX are more cash based. So one is like having a credit card, and the other one's having a cash, right? And I think we've lost a lot by going away from cash as a society, right? The anonymity, the use, the ease of all that kind of stuff. And I just recommend that people on the account based side. Look into the UTXO side. Just have a look under the covers. You'll be surprised, right? And the other side is, for partners, right? Bring it on. Please reach out. Don't be shy. This is going to move fast, and there's a window of opportunity now where people can get in before things get launched. And I think people should take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest
concerns. I think everyone has concerns about the Cardano thing. In other words, that we're not friendly to Cardano. Like,
I've never seen anything that would suggest that.
Yeah, but
not
maybe
in conversation or otherwise.
Maybe there's some reticence there, perhaps. I don't know, like with some of the dApps, or maybe they're going to hear about us for the first time based on this podcast. So just feel free to reach out. We're looking for partners. We're looking to expand. That's basically it.
I don't really see any reason why people won't take an interest in this. I mean, I definitely see a lot of growth potential for sure. I have a test node. I mean, my test node apparently has been running pretty smooth this whole time. So, I have David, he runs my Cardano node, my Crow node, and now he runs my Apex node.
Love it.
And he's like, dude, it's almost like running the thing. Cropex. Yeah, that's a good name for it. Cropex. The Cropex node. Maybe we'll adopt that. But I mean, he basically said setting them up is almost the same thing. Like it's very similar. Yeah. So, and you know, the thing is that I feel like we would have a lot more nodes. I'm actually curious. You know what? This is a good question worth asking. Will you be able to run an Apex node off of an Iagon Cyclone?
Well, you're asking the wrong person. I can get the answer for you, but
because you can appear when those launch, you're going to be able to run your Cardano nodes off of those, in addition to all of the other functionalities that come with them.
Iagon is a provider inside the ecosystem, right?
Yeah,
I'll look into it. I don't have the answer offhand.
That would be a really cool thing, because if you're able, because apparently you're able to run multiple nodes, and you can do a lot of things with these. They're going to come out with we got to get you looped into Iagon,
okay?
Because they're doing really cool shit,
and they may be already involved, and I don't know.
I look at Iagon like Cardano's Filecoin,
right?
But they actually have hardware that they're releasing soon that is going to manage all of that. Like you can set up your own Iagon systems now. For like, you know, shared file sharing and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But they have these terminals. I think they're called Cyclones, if I'm not mistaken.
It's like a node as a service
kind of thing? Kind of, sort of. Yeah. Like you can run like this, you know, file sharing, like think of it maybe like a Dropbox in a way.
Gotcha.
And you can set it up so that it's running out of this hardware system.
Okay.
But in that hardware, it's capable of running like your Cardano node or other nodes, in addition to the Iagon services. And they're launching a Crow version of the hardware, so it's got the Crow on it and all of that stuff. It's pretty cool. They let me design it.
That's awesome.
But I mean, I think that's going to be really cool, because I think one of the biggest struggles with launching either a Cardano node or soon enough like an Apex node, it's just the technical challenges of it. It's not something somebody could just like, I installed it and push a button and I'm running my node, right? And so that's basically one of the things that Iagon wants to remedy, is how difficult it is, so that we're basically establishing more Iagon nodes, more Cardano nodes, and things like that, with these little terminals that'll just sit on your bookshelf connected to your system, your internet.
So I know we're working with TX Pipe. They're working with us. Iagon, I'm not sure. Sorry, Iagon, if you are and I haven't mentioned you. Let me look into it. But it sounds very cool, right?
Yeah.
We have spoken to some node as a service providers, so I'm not sure if they were on the list or not. So let me get back to you on that one.
Yeah. And I interviewed the CEO. Was that a month ago already? It's been a few weeks. Super cool guy, man. Awesome. And off camera and everything, he's just super cool. You know, we had a little bit of a chat before we went and recorded, and very smart, very, very passionate, very much all about everything that they're doing. And like, it was exciting to talk to him and kind of get a feel. Like I was really into Iagon for a while before that, and it's like, okay, man, this is going to be cool shit.
Definitely, we'll reach out to them.
Yeah,
if we haven't already.
Yeah. You know, outside of that, I mean, you're looking at the first quarter of 2025. I will say that I would love to help figure out a way to generate more interest at a time because there's so much happening now, right?
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things holding people back, just based off of a lot of the comments and things I see, is everybody wants to know, you know, when they can get it, where do they get it, how do I get my hands on it before I start promoting it, right? Because everybody wants to be first.
Sure.
And I think that's the biggest hurdle. It's not like this is launching tomorrow and everybody can just ape in and like start off to the races.
Right.
And I think that is one of the biggest challenges, especially in what is ultimately going to become an insanely competitive ecosystem, and you know, just everything else going on around it. So to some extent, I believe that a lot of the things going on with Cardano now, which, you know, man, I mean, for the longest time, you're almost asking yourself, like, man, I've read all these papers. I put so much time. I put years into this.
Sure.
And like my life on YouTube has been basically dedicated to this ecosystem.
Right.
When is anything really big going to happen?
Right.
And then you wake up one day and it's like your phone alerts are going bonkers because everything's happening all at fucking once. And you're like, I can't even pay attention to all of this.
Yeah, totally.
And then you've got Apex. It's like, hey, we're coming too. We're coming too. We're going to be a part of this party.
That's right.
And so it's like, you know, being able to get that message out to people that are going to take an active interest in it. There really is no interest there's no reason why people can't have a genuine interest in Cardano, Apex, or really Polygon or anything else out there. There's no room for the tribalism we're seeing. It is not a zero-sum game.
It's not.
And
and there's an expression that says we overestimate what can be done in 2 years and underestimate what can be done in 10. That's exactly how this works, right? It all comes all of a sudden, right? And we know it's a very competitive environment, but I think based on the team that we built, the way that we built first, announced later, that it's going to be a fully functioning product. And we're in it for the long run. If you look at the tokenomics, like, you know, the core team took lower than typical and longer vesting periods and all that kind of stuff to kind of avoid the scenarios that have plagued other projects. So you have, I mean, I'm just part of a decentralized team, of course, and the rest of it, but you have my commitment that we're in it for the long run. We're not here to pump and dump and you know, just make a quick buck on the bull run and see you later. No, we're here for long, just like Cardano is. Cardano's here forever, right? That's what we want to be as well, right? So I just want to make sure that people understand that that's the case, and we put a deep talent into this project, right? So
I think I've seen what projects look like when they're just in it to make a quick buck.
Sure.
And I've seen what you guys have been doing over you know, a couple of years now.
Yep.
And there's definitely a big and on top of that,
a year and a half.
Well, for me, it feels like it's been like 4.5. You know, but just the different, you know, when people come to me and they say, hey, we're doing this, I mean, it takes me 10 minutes to look at it and be like, you're a cash grab.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I mean, it just doesn't really take much effort anymore. I've seen it all.
Yeah.
And I don't see any cash grabs pulling the people that Apex has, you know, all of you guys that have come from all these different worlds and bringing your wisdom, your expertise, your experience to this project. That doesn't happen really with a cash grab.
I agree.
Cash grab gets one guy that basically takes the hit.
Not fun.
Yeah, right. So it's like a cash grab or like a shitty project. Really, they have one guy who's like, look, guy, you're going to make so much money. You let us use your name. You're going to play a role in this. And you're not even going to care that everyone hates you when it's over.
That's right.
And he's like, all right, fuck it. You know, let's do it.
Yeah.
So it's just a completely different thing.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you see that. We spent a lot of time making sure we put together a quality team, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we all have our reputations. We're not putting our reputations on the line. Right. Like there's a Greek expression that you'd rather lose an eye than lose your reputation.
Right.
And I fully agree with that. So we're putting our...
Man, I could have a hell of a lot more money if I didn't give a shit about reputation or legacy or any of that stuff, you know.
And, you know, what's money if you don't have legacy and reputation?
Yeah, man, that all comes and goes. But your legacy and your name, that's the only thing you got that carries on. So 100%. It means a lot to me in a lot of ways. So I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, man, I think this has been cool.
Yeah,
I you know, this is the first face-to-face interview I've ever done, and you know, hopefully it's great for you guys out there watching this, and you got some really good alpha and some good things coming. I am very much interested and very much into Apex, and I've been held back a lot for a while. So you know, it's good to know that we've got a lot of cool stuff coming right around the corner, and yeah, man, I'm pumped. I think 2025 is just going to be a ridiculous year altogether.
Great year, as long as I can stop looking at my portfolio.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I've learned I just don't even bother because it goes up and it comes down, and it goes up and it comes down. I'm like, you know what? I'll check it next month.
That's right.
You know, everything for me is based on a month now. I don't even bother.
That is so much smarter and so much healthier. I'm still on a daily and multiple times a day. I got to stop that. It's just not good for you.
I had my one like first metric where I'm like, okay, we're good. Like, because I mean, dude, I'm heavily invested, man. I'm like crypto rich. I'm not cash poor. But I'm like, it's risky, you know. Like if the market didn't get to where it's finally at now, I'm like, yeah, we might just have to move. You know, it's kind of like that, you know, because it's like
those memes where they show your bank account and your crypto account, you know.
Exactly. It's like, this can change dramatically over the next 24 hours, and this is all you got to live. So you better hope shit goes well.
That's right.
But you know, when I tell people, and I used to say all the time, passion and profit, you put enough time into educating yourself on what you're actually putting your money into and why, and it helps you weather those storms and those times where you're just, it's easy to second guess your decisions and to wonder, like, did I make the right move? But that's the risk that pays the dividends. And as long as you continue educating yourself and understanding what you're doing, then it should work out fine.
Time in the market is better than timing in the market.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good. I like that. Yeah. That's good. All right. Well, Jerry, man, thanks for coming. And, you know, welcome back anytime, obviously.
Sure.
And maybe at some point in the future, I'll be set up for more than one person, and we can actually have like a group thing going and really dive deeper.
Awesome.
So, yeah, thanks for joining me. To those of you guys out there in crypto land, Apex Fusion, check it out. Follow them on Twitter. Everything's going to be in the description. So make sure you visit it. Follow it, like it, play a role, join the Telegram, join their Discord, which apparently is where the bulk of the community likes to hang out. And until next time, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Crow your coins.
Thank you.